Sint Maarten, one of the most beautiful and biodiverse countries on the planet. But behind the beauty lies a dark secret, a growing crisis that threatens the island's entire future. Climates are shifting, seas are rising, shorelines are vanishing. We're losing coral reefs faster than we can protect them, and the only thing worse than facing these problems is not having the tools or support needed to solve them. With the resilience, sustainable energy, and marine biodiversity resembled program support, critical ideas moved from vision to impact.
My role as project coordinator was my first job out of college. It was the first thing that I did when I got out. In simple terms, CoRENA stands for Coastal Resilience Needs Assessment. And I would say that it is a holistic project that really focuses on setting a framework or a foundation for the sustainable management of St. Maarten's marine and coastal resources. A spatial plan or a zone defines use for certain areas of a place. So, for example, an area can be deemed as residential, or can be deemed as commercial or mixed use, or a protected area that shouldn't be developed on. And so in this way, we can better organize areas and industries and residences so they aren't conflicting with each other and putting human communities at risk or wildlife at risk. Currently, St. Maarten doesn't have a national spatial plan, and that has resulted in a lot of unsustainable and unplanned developments since the 1960s, 1970s, when immigration to the island really started skyrocketing and tourism became the main economic driver of the island.
So Project CoRENA had a huge impact on country St. Maarten and its people in several different ways. Firstly, the area that the Nature Foundation was most involved in was the biodiversity research. So we got a really good understanding of where our baseline biodiversity is, both the marine and the terrestrial ecosystems. We can understand what areas still have important biodiversity to protect and what areas are most under threat due to our biggest problems like overdevelopment and climate change. One of the things that we have to accept living on St. Maarten is that climate change is impacting us more than the larger countries in the world. Sea level rise directly impacts communities that have lived in St. Maarten in the same homes for decades. Simpson Bay Beach is a great example of an extremely developed area that's inhabited by residents that have had these homes for generations, and now all of a sudden their waves, the climate change, the impacts of hurricane are greatly impacting their homes, and they're not built to be resilient against those things. So one of the most important things that came for the Nature Foundation out of this project was an increase in our capacity. The Nature Foundation has been around since 1997, but our history is very tumultuous. Some years we don't have any funding at all. Even now, our current service level agreement has a maximum of about $115,000 a year for all of our regular programs, and then a small additional amount for invasive species management. CoRENA staff doubled the staff that we had at the Nature Foundation while it was ongoing. It was hugely impactful for what we can get done and what we can provide for the island. And this program ending without the next big funding coming through has been a huge loss of capacity and resources for our foundation moving forward.
First of all, I will say yes to anything that is hands-on. Our students learn better hands-on. They want to be in on it. I think it was great that these maps were made. It really then helped solidify the ideas of the spatial planning, because this is, in essence, just sharing. They're high schoolers, they've gone through that elementary, they're working on better sharers, but this was indeed formalizing it to say, you know what, we can coexist, but kind of like the little child who wants to have a piece of that chocolate and you break it off. And it's the appearance. But you have a larger portion. And then making them understand, like this one would say, but look, it doesn't matter because this portion is not useful for your needs.
Yeah, I think the workshop made the environmental issues more exciting because we got to learn about how people spatially organize the land. So like businesses and environmental concerns, like they overlap. And sometimes businesses need the space for economic reasons, and sometimes it also needs to be environmentally good for the planet. And I think the workshop taught me how all these different factors combine to what needs to happen.
I wanted to participate more in helping the environment and cleaning the oceans, and it changed my perspectives because before I could care less about these things, but now I enjoy doing beach cleanups, mangrove restorations, and just helping in general.
Well, the most fun part about this activity is seeing what the people go through, like the environmentalists, the shipping companies, what they go through to reach like a middle point so it adapts to everything.
How animals communicate underwater, how they locate themselves, because it's very dark and everything. And I was wondering how they could do that. And doing this taught me a bunch about the marine life.
After the workshop, I learned more into detail about it and what people named it. And I learned that how businesses come into conflict, now they have to work together to form plans on how to work with the marine ecosystems and do spatial planning.
I understand that the planning was important because companies has to cooperate with each other and plan out where each person goes.
So CoRENA stands for Coastal Resilience Needs Assessment, and it's based on this idea that our marine and coastal resources are not managed properly. And this is due to a few things such as limited capacity, limited data, limited regulations. So CoRENA wanted to build on all these areas, enhance them, and create an evidence base to work towards more sustainable management of the marine and coastal zone. So I would describe marine spatial planning as creating marine parks, if you want to think about it that way. You're creating areas, zones in the marine zone, in the marine area, saying that there's certain activities that can or cannot happen there. So it's not just a one-off block saying you cannot do anything in this marine zone. You're creating sort of corridors and areas where you can do certain actions. And that's of course based on science saying why you cannot and can do things in certain areas. So coastal resilience, to the fisherman, for example, you might think of it more tangibly like storm waves, right? But what we've learned from CoRENA, because we conducted a socioeconomic valuation, that it means so much more than that. It means the fish that he can catch. In fact, we found the impact of not managing our marine environment properly can lead to up to $60 million of decreased yield in the fishing industry. So it might not be visible in that regard, but the impacts will be felt. We assessed the economic value of tourism in the marine and coastal environment, of ecotourism, so mainly snorkeling and diving tourism. And similarly, if there's no fish in the environment, it impacts your business as well. So after Resembit finishes and CoRENA comes to a close, or it has come to a close, I'm confident that the work will continue because CoRENA actually worked to achieve goals of our Nature Policy Plan 2021-2025, which was foundational goals that we needed to achieve the rest of the policy. So this is the unlocking of the rest of the policy and what we need to achieve. If I had to sum up what Project CoRENA achieved, it would be demonstrating the importance of protecting, preserving, and restoring our marine and coastal ecosystems is important not just for our natural heritage, but also for adaptation to climate change.
Resembit is the driving force behind countless thriving projects region-wide, proving the power of locally driven action. The more we achieve, the greater the impact we create. Impact builds momentum, and momentum starts with you.